While not strictly gaps in the plot of a story, holes in a character's logic can leave a question mark over an entire movie. Now, it can be more forgivable for a character to take leave of their common sense if the consequences are only minor, but it's a different story when one of these decisions informs the narrative of the entire movie. And with just one logical decision made by one single character, these flicks likely just wouldn't have had any real story to tell at all. So I'm Gareth from WhatCulture.com, and here are 10 movies where logic lost. Number 10, Frozen. Towards the beginning of Frozen, the relationship between Elsa and Anna as children is explored. As the song says, they used to be best buddies, until there was an accident involving the future queen's powers, and she hurt her younger sister. After taking his children to magical trolls, as you do, King Agnar decided to lock Elsa up for years to stop her from harming anyone else with her powers, keeping them hidden away. Given all the information, however, this was absolutely the wrong thing to do, and indirectly led to the events of the entire movie. From seeing Elsa playing with Anna as small children, it was clear that she already had immense control over her powers. The only reason Anna was hurt was because Elsa slipped over, not because she lost control. And kids are gonna be kids, they're gonna fall over. Grandpappy the troll also told them that fear was the enemy. So why in the world did her parents shut her off from the world and tell her to conceal her powers? It was exactly this that created the fear that would become her enemy, and ultimately led to her losing control. Instead, had she spent that time using, understanding, and honing her abilities, not shut away like there was something wrong with her, there would have been no eternal winter for anyone. Number 9, Iron Man 2. The first major event that took place in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe was the bombing that saw Tony Stark inflicted with several tiny pieces of shrapnel, trying every second to claw their way into his heart. This paved the way for the arc reactor both keeping him alive and powering a suit of armor giving birth to Iron Man. Sounds a lot better than Shrapnel Resisting Man, doesn't it? By Stark's second solo movie, however, the reactor had started to turn on Iron Man, and though it was keeping the shrapnel at bay, it was poisoning him. A large part of the movie's narrative revolved around Tony looking for an alternative power source to the palladium core that was killing him. It is only in retrospect, looking back on the events of Iron Man 2 several years later, that Tony Stark's gap in logic is highlighted. He spent all this time on a freight train towards death thanks to the arc reactor, but why didn't he just have the shrapnel removed like he did at the end of Iron Man 3? Was this just not an option all along? What a silly sausage. Number 8, Suicide Squad. The idea of bringing together a team like the Suicide Squad makes at least a small amount of sense in that it was Amanda Waller behind it. Often viewing human life as expendable, she had absolutely no issue putting these criminals and murderers in the line of fire as a ready-made scapegoat should things go a bit wrong. The issue comes with what exactly the team would be used for. Coming after the death of Superman in the DCEU, Task Force X was put together as a deterrent to the next superpower being to arrive from space. Essentially, should someone possess the powers of Superman without the morality or kindness towards humanity. So basically Zod. Superman himself barely managed to defeat Zod though, so what on earth did Waller expect a psychopath with a baseball bat, an idiot with a boomerang, and a man who was good at tying knots to do against such a threat? Then there is the inclusion of June Moon and Enchantress. Had Amanda stopped to think logically, she would have realized she could never hope to control such an ancient supernatural being. She then would have had to send the Suicide Squad to clean up the mess she made trying to assemble the Suicide Squad. Number 7, School of Rock. There are a few things that can make you feel quite as old as the fact that School of Rock was released 2 whole decades ago. The movie is iconic, it's heartwarming, and it features Jack Black going full Jack Black. It's an incredibly enjoyable movie, but you do have to suspend your disbelief and ignore one major point of contention. Namely that it would never be so easy for someone like Dewey Finn to just walk into a school and start teaching children. In the beginning of the movie, a down-on-his-luck Dewey takes a call for his roommate, an actual substitute teacher, who is being offered a job at Horace Green Prep. Apparently hearing nothing but the amount of money on offer, Dewey decides to roleplay as Ned for a few weeks and pick up some quick cash. With no qualifications, no criminal background check, and apparently absolutely no security measures of any kind, one of the best schools in the state let a complete stranger in to teach their children simply because he said his name was Ned. Number 6, The Simpsons Movie. Logic and a sound structured narrative aren't always key parts of animation series like The Simpsons and Family Guy. Instead, the idea is to get Homer Simpson and Peter Griffin doing increasingly ridiculous things, whether they really make sense or not. For The Simpsons Movie, however, Homer's lack of common sense almost led to the permanent destruction of the entire town of Springfield. Lisa had been appealing to the people of Springfield to stop polluting their lake, as they were just one piece of garbage away from a complete meltdown. At the same time, Homer's pig was busy filling up an entire silo with its own waste. waste. As the town pulled together and cleaned up the river, forbidding anyone from dumping in there ever again, Marge instructed Homer to get rid of the pig crap silo. Then, while in the queue for the recycling plant, Lenny called and told him the donut store was giving away free donuts, and that he needed to get there quick. Homer, of course, dumps the silo in the river, destroying the water and directly leading to the EPA placing the dome over the entire town. Homer isn't much of a thinker, admittedly, but surely even he could have realized he could have calmly driven over to the donut store, eaten his weight in donuts, and then simply returned to the recycling plant, right? Number 5. Jaws. Jaws is one of the most iconic movies in cinematic history, with one of the most well-known and feared villains ever. With just 2 notes of a score, everyone knew there was gonna be trouble. Everyone, that is, except Mayor Vaughn. Generally, after the kind of vicious shark attack that the beach suffered at the beginning of Jaws, you would have thought the decision would have been made to close it off right away. Yes, loss of income would have been a tough pill to swallow, but compared to the genuine danger any beach patrons were putting themselves in, this should have been a bit of a no-brainer, really. Instead, Amity Island Beach was allowed to remain open, fully in the knowledge that there was a killer shark in the vicinity and the price was well and truly paid. Number 4. Shaun of the Dead. It's hard to say how exactly you would react should an actual zombie apocalypse shake the world as it does in so many flicks. Shaun and Ed almost laughed it off, hurling vinyl records at the zombies moving towards them until they realized how dangerous the scenario actually was. That's when they decided they needed a plan. There were a few different variations of Shaun's plan before he achieved his apparent slice of fried gold, most of which were a bit terrible, to be honest. His heart was in the right place as he wanted to save everyone he cared about, but his downfall was listening to Ed. The first plan he came up with was perfect. They were to go over to his mum's house, pick her up while killing the infected stepdad, then all go to Liz's high-rise flat, which is logically one of the safest places they could possibly be. This was an actual slice of fried gold until Ed objected. It's understandable that he questioned why Shaun wanted to go to Liz's since they weren't together anymore, but how could he not see that it was the safest option? Instead, he wanted to go somewhere familiar, where he knew where the exits were because Liz's flat was a maze apparently, and he wanted to be able to smoke. This led to the ridiculous decision that the pub was the best option. All this without even mentioning the silly choice to bring the clearly infected Philip along with them. Number 3. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. You could argue that there is a clear lack of logic throughout the entire magical Harry Potter series. From Voldemort not using a more effective method of killing Harry in the first place, to Hogwarts seemingly being unwilling to keep up with modern technology, instead relying on owls and quills. However, the worst example of this is unquestionably the Tri-Wizard Tournament. It's right there in the name that the Tri-Wizard Tournament should have 3 combatants, 1 from each of the participating schools. When Harry Potter's name was drawn out then, a 4th student who was underage, the obvious thing for Dumbledore to do would have been to discount it entirely. He knew that Voldemort had returned and knew that this would put Harry at great risk. Still, going toe-to-toe with dragons, potentially drowning, and getting lost forever in a creepy maze were all apparently fine consequences for a boy who clearly shouldn't have been there. This was a school, and if just one adult who was in charge of these children's safety had used their common sense, Harry wouldn't have been anywhere near the Goblet of Fire. Magical contracts be damned, this was absolutely ridiculous, and Dumbledore should be ashamed of himself. Number 2. Every Jurassic Park movie. Jurassic Park brilliantly stands up to the test of time. It became the highest grossing movie of all time at the time, and it inspired a franchise that is still just about alive 30 years later. None of the subsequent 5 movies could hold a candle to the original, but still. After the nightmare that was Jurassic Park, however, there was one simple rule that could have avoided any and all events that took place since The Lost World. Namely, stop going to the islands inhabited by dinosaurs. In the immediate sequel, they ended up bringing a man-eating T-Rex to mainland USA because 2 separate crews were sent to Isla Sorna, and in the 3rd movie, Paul Kirby endangered and saw the deaths of multiple people because others were still obsessed with visiting dinosaur islands. The less said about the Jurassic World trilogy, the better, but again, it all stems from the ridiculous idea to ignore everything that happened at Jurassic Park all those years earlier. And if you want to go right back to the start of the logic-devoid franchise, why didn't John Hammond just pay Dennis Nedry the extra money he wanted? He loved boasting that he spared no expense, but the one expense he did spare ended up destroying the damn island. Number 1. A Quiet Place. Imagine the horrors of living in a world where even the slightest noise meant death at the hands of an unspeakably horrifying monster. Then imagine having to live with yourself after seeing said monster take the life of your youngest child. It was a tough life for John Krasinski and Emily Blunt in A Quiet Place, and though clearly a reaction to the grief of losing a loved one, the decision to have another child in such a world was an utterly insane one. Surely the family would have realized the risk that would have come with firstly making the baby, then delivering the baby, and finally having to raise said baby. Everybody grieves in their own way, and what they went through was unimaginable, but their reaction was devoid of any common sense or thought. The family could have avoided almost every scrap of danger, however, had they also just lived closer to the waterfall. Krasinski's character was able to shout at the top of his lungs to his son with no worries about the monsters. And yet they never connected the dots and moved closer to the rushing water that would mask their every noise. What are they like, eh? And that's our list. Know of any other movies where logic lost? Let us know all about them in the comment section right down below, and do not forget to like, share, and click on that subscribe button while you're down there. Also, if you're into this kind of stuff, then please head on over to whatculture.com and find some more brilliant articles, just like the one this video you're watching right this second is based on. I've been Illogical Gareth from whatculture.com. Thank you very much for watching this lovely video today. Hopefully I'll see your pretty damn faces rather soon, but in the meantime, just be good to yourself. Bye bye!